think a lot of times people really overthink it. They're like, oh, well, someone else is doing it. Yeah, but is that problem solved? Well, no, that's like someone saying like, oh, well, other people have coffee shops. Okay, so no one else should ever open a coffee shop ever again.
Right.
Okay, cool. Right. So I think we overthink ourselves out of solutions in that regard. I think it's like, well, who am I to start? Well, why couldn't you start? Like, why don't you, do you know more than the person struggling? Do you know more than the you 5 years ago? Like, that's who you're selling to. It was like you 5 years ago. So do you wish that you would have had help from someone like you then? Well, if the answer is yes, then yeah, like get on it. Because I think sometimes we think our shepherds need to be the ones at the top of the mountain, but they really just need to be a couple steps ahead.
100%.
They know more than the person at the top of the mountain because they're like, hey, like this thing was flooded out a week ago, watch out, versus the one who's been there a couple of years ago doesn't really have as relevant of information. And then, and I think a lot of people just kind of accept a lot of the lies of circumstance. Like a lot of people tell me like, well, my purpose is just to be a good dad. And I'm like, somewhere in Timothy where it talks about like, he who does not provide for his family is worse than an infidel. And so like, I tell people if they're Christian, I'm like, hey, like that is basics. Like, congrats. Like you're checking off the basics. Like, but whether like you're a believer or not, like you should take care of your family. You should be a good friend, a good sister, a good employee, but what else? Yeah. Like if you're just fine with the bare minimum, like that's totally cool. But I think that there's some of us and not all of us, like, I don't know why some people are just wired this way and not others, but if you know you're made for more, like don't let go of the dream that hasn't let go of you. Yeah. Plain and simple, because it's not going to go away. It'll reiterate, it'll, make you bitter or it'll make you better depending on how it is that you actually react to it. And so, those are, I think, some of the big things that I see people listening to and waiting for the right time and like, oh, it'll cost too much or take too much time or whatever. It's like, don't be so dramatic. Like, like people are like, oh, I'm so afraid of success. Like, hey, I love you and you're talented. You're not going to blow up overnight. Like, I'm just going to tell you, like, you are not going to be like, famous in 6 days or 6 months. Right. So like, don't think of yourself that big. Just like do the work.